Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Franchise Show. I hope you are all doing well. This is the show, and I'm going to do it where we get under the hat of all things franchising. And it's a live show. Well, it's live if it's September the 23rd at about 5:15 for around 50 minutes. And what do we do? Each week on the Franchise Show, we take a new topic and we have lovely guests to talk about that. And today, of course, is no exception to that. We have some fantastic guests with us. First of all, the topic today is hiring fantastic franchise people, or what I was going to put, which was finding fantastic franchise folk. But that was harder to say, so I didn't go for that one. And we have two wonderful people with us to discuss this. First of all, we have our lovely supporter and returning guest, Nik Plevan from etalent. Nik, welcome back to the Franchise Show.
Thank you.
And we have the lovely Lee Fowle. Now, Lee is a Specsavers franchisee, so it's going to be fantastic to get that perspective on our conversation today. If you are here with us live, please pop in a comment, say hello, and get involved in our conversation. Give us your experiences in franchising, whether that's franchisees that you're trying to find, whether that's staff that you're trying to find. You know, how do you find the right people for your business? How do you align them with your values and your culture? So before we get into that, let's do a couple of introductions. We will start with Nik. Perhaps, Nik, you can give us a little introduction for people that don't know you. And obviously lots of people do, but that would be fantastic.
Thank you, Harvey. So when people ask me what I do, I usually say I'm not a recruitment agency because we do things completely differently. We help companies recruit, but we do it by giving them the tools to do it better, to save time, to save effort and therefore money, and make sure they recruit the people that have the right soft skills for the job, and also people who will fit their company culture, the teams that they're going to go in, how to manage them, how to motivate them, give them all that information before they even see them. So that's what we do.
Fantastic. And Lee, it would be great to get the same from you, a little bit of an introduction, kind of how you've got into the world of franchising and hearing aids and spectacles as well.
Yeah. Hi, Harvey. Thanks for having me on. Hi, everyone. My name's Lee. I've been franchised with Specsavers. It's called a joint venture partner for around about the last 12 years. Kind of fell into it, as tend to with Specsavers. You don't leave school thinking you're going to do that as a vocation. So I got headhunted. I was previously working for Argos for a number of years as a senior manager, and was in convenience stores. I had my own convenience store, so I was a bit of an entrepreneur on the side. So it really was a good blend of the two. That blue chip experience and the entrepreneurial side. So franchising was just a logical step, and just Specsavers was the first one that come along, and I've been with them ever since. I started out as an individual franchisee, and I've got multiple sites. I've got 5 sites across Norfolk and Norwich. I've got a team of 160, and thoroughly enjoying it. And I'm a clinician as well. Trained myself in audiology once I was a franchisee, and so I've got both sides. So I'm a businessman and a bit of a clinician on the side as well.
That's great. Thank you both for that introduction. It's really good to hear how you got yourself involved in franchising. I mean, a lot of people have different ways of going into it. I mean, you said there you just fell into it. Maybe you should have had glasses. You wouldn't fall into things then. But look, it's fantastic. And, to have that number of people, and, we're going to delve a little bit deeper into how the process you have for attracting people into your business and how you align them with your culture. But let's say hello to a few people who have joined us here this evening already. We have Daniel Bull with us, and Daniel has put good evening all with a lovely smiley face as well. Well, good evening to you too, Daniel. And please give us your experiences of dealing with people and hiring people, and how you get the best people for your business, and how you get the best for those people in your business as well. Because, you know, if you're talking about longevity and retaining your staff, you want to try and keep people happy. And, you know, how do you do that? And we're definitely going to be getting into that in a minute. We've got the lovely Lisa Feverick with us. Lisa is a specialist dietitian and helps women who are going through the menopause, and she is a lovely lady and a regular to our show. And she's put, hi everyone, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on people, you know, because you don't have to be in franchising to have a passion and an understanding for people. You know, people are a big part of all of our businesses and our lives. So it would be interesting to hear everybody's thoughts. And then finally, we've got Steve Barrett with us. And he's put, good evening from Valencia. We're reaching all the corners of the world here. Well, it's fantastic to have you with us, Steve. Please give us your experiences and thoughts about hiring people. You know, whether you're hiring people or whether you've even gone through the recruitment process yourself, of which most people have, you're going to have an empathy and an understanding as to what that process looks and feels like. We've got a couple more people. So before we get into our conversation, let's make sure we recognize these people. We've got the lovely Nadine with us. Always good to have you with us. Nadine's put, good evening, everyone. Please give us your thoughts as well on people and hiring and all of these wonderful things. Finally, before we get into this, we have the lovely Neil Newman with us. And he's put, hi Harvey, interested to hear about this subject matter. Thanks, all three of you. Well, we're going to be looking forward to getting into this conversation ourselves as well. So let's do that right now. Let's maybe begin with yourself, Lee, and perhaps you could give us an understanding of, as you grew your businesses and you've got 5 outlets there, you know, how did you go about the process of hiring your people? You know, how did you have examples of perhaps when you got it wrong and how you started getting it right?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, it's evolved over time, Harvey. Initially, I was very much involved personally recruiting the individuals when I was in my own standalone business. So it's really easy for me to find good talent because you feel it and you see it when you got them in front of you. But I suppose the underlying thing, whether it's me recruiting myself or me later on advising on my team on how to recruit, the same theme was there, and that was make sure that we got the right culture. So we know our values, we know what we want in the team members. So it's about understanding that culture and who's in front of us, would they be a good match for that? And also that the capability of the individual. So as you're having the conversations with them, they might not have the skill set, right? They might not have the technical skill, specifically with specsavers. They might not be an optician, or they might not be a dispensing optician, never been there before. But have they got the attitude to be able to develop that skill and that right behaviour? And they're two things that have carried on throughout, whether it's me advising my team on how to recruit, etc., or doing it myself from very early stage. You know, really looking for that character of that individual. I started with the end in mind when I looked at my first business, and I always knew that I would grow into more franchises, I grow into more businesses. So as I was looking at the talent in front of me, it was always, if they've got the match of culture, they've got the capability, the attributes that come with it, where can I put them? Where can they grow as I grow within that business? And I've been very fortunate that I've sold 2 franchises within my time. They were both, my current franchise group, I've secured a management buyout as well. And that's again through identifying the right people, giving them the training, because they've got the culture, the capability, to then become and buy my business as I'm looking to exit. So I started with that end in mind. It's really fortunate to have great people, but again, you got to put the numbers in when it comes to interviewing, because in my mind, you interview slow, you recruit slow, and you fire fast. So if you do make the wrong decision, you really allocate that new decision early on and get that difficult question out of the way. Because you get a good team member, they can make your business. You get a bad team member, they can break your business. So it's really important to understand that early on.
Absolutely no. I mean, what do you make of that, Nick? I mean, you've been busy nodding there, as I was, so I think we're both in agreement. And it, you deal a lot with soft skills, and Lee was mentioning there an attitude over technical ability. There are certain things that can be trained, and certain things that can't be easily trained. And that attitude, those values, they're much harder to train, aren't they?
Well, it's weird. It's almost like I coached Lee in what to say, but I don't think he needs any coaching from me. It's totally in line with what we are doing at etalent, and the reason I started etalent in the first place is to help companies recruit people with the right soft skills and the right culture for that organization. Because as you rightly say, you can teach hard skills all day long, but you can't teach soft skills. If somebody doesn't know what empathy is and can't explain it, there is no way you will teach them how to do that. Certain skills you might be able to, but when push comes to shove, they'll revert back to the way that they do things. And that's probably when you want them not to do that. So if you start off with the right material in the first place, it just works. And not all companies are lucky enough to have someone like Lee who understands this. Some of them don't know how to do that, and that's what I've tried to do with etalent, is to bring some science to this particular process and identify those soft skills through psychometrics and behavioral profiling, and give people those tools to be able to make those decisions, even though they may not have the natural skills to identify themselves. So, but I totally agree what he said, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lee, you said a few interesting things that really stood out for me there. I mean, one of the things was trying to think a little bit further ahead in your business.
Yeah.
If you're a franchisor or a franchisee, whatever you are, you've got an exit plan. Well, you've got a plan, whether that's exit, that's everything leading up to the exit. You've got this plan, and you're trying to think about the people that can be in the business throughout that plan. And I think it's very important, and I think really wise of you to say that you've got those people in the business already, and you're really nurturing them, ready to take on something else within the business. I mean, I think I mentioned this before, but there was a chap I spoke to once, and he was developing, and he decided that he would bring in a manager with the express idea of them becoming the franchisee. And that was right in his mind from the beginning, and therefore everything that he's doing, the people he was looking for, that's in the mind there. So yeah, really, that really stood out to me as something that's very important. And I imagine that Lee, as you were growing, and as you were honing this process, it started to become easier to pass that on. You said at the beginning you were heavily involved, and then you started to build out something that you could give that across to somebody else, and they could use that. And that started to work pretty well.
Yeah, it's franchising, isn't it? It's repeatable systems, Harvey. You've got the booklet. You follow the booklet. You can make amendments to it because it's about personalising it to your own, character and those around you. But yeah, you use the tools that you have, and you learn through experience how to hone them to get it even better. And you made a really interesting point before around, isn't it great for a franchisor to have the franchisees fulfilling their own destiny and also providing great talent to grow their business alongside it? It's a win-win-win, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it is. It's a win for the franchisor, it's a win for the franchisee, and it's a win for the wonderful people that are getting jobs. And I know, Nick, you often say this, but if you have a job that you enjoy because you've chosen well, and you've been chosen well because you've got that right set of soft skills that are just going to match in, you'll be happier. And because you're happier, you'll want to stay longer. And if you stay longer, that's going to cost the business less money. There'll be less heartache. You mentioned, Lee, there, recruit slow, fire fast. Well, we're not skirting around the fact that sometimes the other side of it, when you have to make someone redundant, when you have to fire someone for some reason, it's a very, very hard thing to do. It's very unpleasant to do for everybody. And the more you can limit having to do that, the better for everybody. You know, if someone can, because look, when most people choose a job, they don't necessarily think about those set of soft skills.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think we look at it enough. You know, we might have, you said there, you fell into that role. I think I did. You know, I just took opportunities as they came along in my life. And I think that young people, they might just sort of say, oh, I might do this or I might do that, or they take a job here or there. They don't necessarily think about the elements of that job and whether it's going to match in with them.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think sometimes people look at a job and think, oh, God, I'd really like to do that. Sounds really interesting, but without realizing what it actually entails on a day-to-day basis. And the employer, of course, knows what it entails on a day-to-day basis. And therefore, if they will look for those soft skills, that will allow that person to do their job well. I mean, I was in a coffee outlet recently, and the person behind the counter no, they just shouldn't have been there. Because they didn't like people. They did not like people at all. You know, whenever you asked them, you got a grumpy response. Now, it could have been, you know, just a bad day, but my guess is that even if it had been a bad day, the right sort of person would not have reacted that way. And they just got the wrong person in the wrong job. But you know, if you know what you're doing, then you don't make those mistakes, whether it's through the skill that Lee has or whether you use tools that help you make those decisions.
I really like that, Nick, and because it's on the reverse of that as well. When you're in those situations, you can really find really good people, because when they're given great customer service, you just look at them and you think, I would love you in my business. And I've got business cards. I just literally hand them to them and say, if you ever want to change your career, I love what you've done, give me a shout, call me.
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea too. You know, people ask me, how do you find good people? And I said, well, you can't always find them on job boards. Sometimes you just fall across them, like you just said.
I think that's really interesting, actually. I mean, because when you're getting great service, you're seeing really what someone can do in their natural environment. When someone is interviewed, they're nervous, you know, it's not quite them. I mean, good interviewers can see through that, of course. But if you see someone just in their natural environment and you see that they're chirpy, they're polite, they're overcoming difficulties whilst being pleasant, you know, they're holding a door open for someone, they're helping someone, you learn a huge amount more than you perhaps would in any interview situation.
That's right. And again, using different interview styles really helps. So we have, you know, there's a general process that we follow would be an initial email arrangement and then a Teams call. And then we follow that up with a meet and greet when they come in, they have a look round, they understand the people, can chat to their potential colleagues. And then we have a further follow up, a more relaxed interview then to really understand, you know, how they felt about it. What do they notice? And what we've also started doing, this is really interesting, Harvey, is that we've never done this before. We're sending the criteria of the interview questions and everything that we're going to go through before we actually have the interview. And we just found that's really helped to relax the candidates. You know, we tend to have two types of candidates: first entrant to market, apprentices, really early career, young people, or people come back into the job market, and then highly skilled clinicians. And with that first cohort, being able to give them as much information as possible really relaxes them. They don't have to worry about the answers, and they can actually present themselves as they would have normally, naturally.
I think that's really interesting. You know, taking out some of this stuff it's traditional, isn't it? You know, that for some reason that it's some sort of test that you're going to hide it away. You want to spring something on someone.
Yeah.
And why do that? Let them prepare. Let them feel more relaxed. You know, try and understand more of who they are. You know, things have got to change. And I know, Nick, you know, you talk about this a lot with the CV and the fact that it's an outdated tool, you know, and the processes a little bit, perhaps, you know.
Don't get me on the CV, Harvey. No, you don't want to do that.
I know. I like just teasing you with the word CV. But look, you know, it's interesting. You know, we rely on these things, and like Lee said, you know, look at things in a different way. You know, I mention this a lot because I I really like this particular method. But when Ryan from Teslon is looking for new franchisees, he takes them out for dinner. Now, he takes them out for dinner to see how they behave with other people. You know, do they hold a door open? You know, are they kind in public? You know, walk past you know, perhaps a homeless person. You know, are they compelled to maybe help? Or, you know, if someone tries to stop them, you know, and these little things, you can't see that type of behavior in an interview, can you? You know, it takes these other situations, get people into their comfort zone. I won't mention the C word to you, Nick, but what we will talk about in a minute is we'll just talk about that process, because I know that there's a business that you're working with that have given up using that particular early method of receiving that information. And I think it would be good to sort of go through that in a moment. But I just want to recognize and say hello to the lovely Simon Wise, my partner on our sister show and my friend. And he's put, hello, franchise friends. I love talking about franchise talent. Look, well, Simon is a franchise recruiter here in the UK. So great to have you with us. And I think he's put up another question. So let's have a quick look at that one as well. And he's put, sometimes we overlook the most basic human skills needed to hire the best talent. Intelligence searching, responding, listening, and feedback are some of the things people do badly. Yeah, I mean, you've got to get those fundamentals right, haven't you, before you do this. You know, especially, I'm going to highlight the word there, listening.
Yeah.
From both sides. You know, if you don't listen, you know, I think you're going to be in trouble, and I think it's going to be tricky to do the job, especially if it's in customer services in any way. That's for sure.
It's really, and I think, Harvey, it's sometimes you think you put yourself in the shoes of the interviewer. If they've not done it before, they haven't had the coaching or the guidance, or they haven't sat in with more experienced people doing the interviews. Quite often they are just thinking about their next question rather than responding or deep listening to what that person's just said, and, you know, thinking more of it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, I remember this this time. I was just having a Zoom call with somebody. It wasn't an interview, but I was just having a Zoom call with somebody, and he said, "You need to listen, but you need to listen with intent." And I was writing something down that he was saying, but it looked like I wasn't listening. And it just reminded me that there's a difference between listening and really listening and hearing, I think. But let's go to you now, Nick, and let's talk a little bit about how this process how does this process work? Obviously, you've got this platform. People are used to receiving this information and getting these things and looking through them. What's this different way of doing it for people that don't know about that?
Okay, so I you know, you mentioned the C word. It's not that I really loathe CVs, but I think that the wrong tool to use at the very front end of the process, because there's a danger that you can discard people just because they haven't got what you think is a really critical element. But actually, as we've talked already, hard skills can be taught. And so really, instead of focusing on the CV and the hard skills, experience, education, and so on, you should focus on the soft skills. So the way we do it is by a targeted psychometric assessment that specifically identifies personality characteristics that are important in that role. So the way I usually sort of illustrate that is, say, if you're looking for someone to work in a coffee store, then you'll be looking for customer service attitude, accommodation, resilience, because not everybody is polite. You might look for sociability. Those things are really important. And if they haven't got those, the likelihood is they won't be successful. But if you're looking for, let's say, a maintenance engineer, none of those things are relevant because they tend to work with things, not with people. So you're more interested in safety, detail orientation, following a process, working in a very structured environment where you're doing things in a particular way. And again, if you haven't got those, the likelihood is you won't be successful. So that's, if you like, our first stage is that. Actually, that's not true. Our first stage is looking for those sort of critical elements that would be in the CV, but not in the CV, that we don't ask for them in the CV because that takes time and effort. So we ask them those specific questions up front, takes them seconds to complete, and it serves the same purpose at that point. So the next stage is the personality, and then the final stage is will they fit in with the team? Will they fit in with the company culture? And that we tend to do with behavioral profiling and identify the specific behavioral preferences that they have and see how they fit in with the culture of the organization. One of the things, I'm not quite sure this is stop press, but almost, we're just adding values as well. So motivations, what is it that pushes that person's buttons? We're going to be adding that too. It won't be for every job, but for certain jobs, it will be absolutely critical to get that right. So all of that is scientifically validated, so we know that it works. It's not something I thought of on a dull Thursday evening. We've had it fully validated. We know that it works, and we know that it's predictive. So that's the way we do it. It's sort of turning it the other way around. And once you've identified the people that look as though their soft skills are right, then you can look at the CV. Then you can say, oh, what's he done? And so on. Why has he done that? And try and consider those things. But to do it the other way around, to me, has the danger of throwing the baby out with the bathwater because of one tiny little speck that isn't quite right. And if you look at LinkedIn and other platforms, there are a number of people who are complaining about the fact they've applied for so many jobs and they've got nowhere. And you think, well, why is that? Is it AI? Is it somebody who's looking at the CV rather than looking at the individual? And we try and turn that around. We look at the individual first and see whether what they have in terms of their sort of what's inside them, what makes them who they are, whether that's going to be suitable for the business.
Well, absolutely. What do you make of that, Lee?
I think that's pretty good. I really like that. And I was just thinking about ChatGPT as you were talking, and how many people must be running their CVs through ChatGPT and coming up with the same stuff, and really making something that's quite mediocre look amazing. When you look at that CV, you think, "Oh my God, we need to get this person in." But actually, you just need to think so much deeper. I suppose, Nick, the question for me, because I'm not familiar with your platform and what you do, does that give your customers a far greater outcome?
Absolutely. In fact, I think Harvey sort of hinted at it. I won't mention the company, but there's a company in the coffee business. They were using CVs constantly. In fact, the owner's wife, when I came into her office, was behind a pile of CVs, and I was introduced as a man who would get rid of the CVs, and that got her attention. And ever since that day, and that was about 8 years ago, they've stopped using CVs. They use entirely soft skills. Because if you think about it, if you're hiring a barista, it doesn't really matter what they've done before. If they've got the right soft skills, you can teach them how to make a cappuccino. It's not exactly difficult. So, but if they haven't got the soft skills, then I don't care how many flowers they put on top of the froth, it's not going to work out.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because the type of things we're talking about here, values and the soft skills, on that traditional CV, they're often an afterthought. There was something that someone put in the sort of hobbies and interests section, whereas they should be front and center, and in my experience, when I've been on that other side of the table in the recruitment process, people are looking at the description bit at the top, and they're looking at the last 3 roles and trying to compare that to the skills needed for this role. And like you say, it's looking at things in a different way, trying to identify what the person is behind that CV. It can be harder to do it, but if you can use the tools that Nick has, or if you can find other ways in your business to identify those soft skills with good questions, then you're really going to have some people that have got longevity in those roles.
Harvey, there is another reason for it too. I mean, apart from the fact that it takes a huge amount of time and you potentially throw out the baby with the bathwater, there is a lot of evidence, because I looked at it when I started this business, that shows that hard skills, experience, qualifications, education are just not predictive of future performance. The reason they're not is because every company is different, and what somebody might have done in one company, you move them into another one, and those hard skills just don't make up for all the other stuff that isn't, that is far more influential in making that person successful.
Yeah.
So having gone through all that pain of sifting through 50, 60, 80 CVs, actually you've wasted your time, because that wasn't a predictive element. The predictive element is somewhere else. That's why I built this business. Sorry,
Yeah.
I get a bit passionate about this stuff.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we should be passionate about it, because, people are the heart of our business. I've said this many, many times, and I see it in every business that I go to. And people are what makes a business what it is, good or bad. And that's not good or bad people. That's just some wrong decisions being made there, and someone that had those soft skills and those values and culture. We spoke a little bit about that. Now they're tricky ones. I mean, I always think culture is what an organization has, and values is what an individual has. And trying to match those two things and blend those two things together is definitely a challenge. But it's what will make a successful hire and a happy employee and a happy employer as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the values I was referring to are really the values that you might say as an employer, an individual has to have related to a specific role. So if we're looking at, let's say, someone in the care sector, if they haven't got empathy, and if they haven't got the desire to help others, social value, if they haven't got that, then they're just not going to work out. I don't care how good they are at getting somebody out of bed, it's just not going to work. And similarly, if you're looking for a car salesman, unless they're motivated by money, they're not going to work out either. It's but they wouldn't work in the care sector. So it's matching, and that we've been doing it reasonably well with the personality assessments and behavior, but for certain roles you really do need an additional element, which is the values bit. So that's why we're adding that.
Yeah, I've got a really interesting experience with culture. So across my 5 locations, I have different leaders in different businesses, and each one has different teams with different values and different skill sets, and they recruit to what suits them within their business. Each one is successful, but that leader's shaping those around them to suit them.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. So they've got a different value set that they're putting into place, and they're getting a team that suits that value set.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. And how do you go about building that value set? Because that was a question that I had for both of you, actually. And we've got a few examples of this, but how do you test soft skills? You've given a good example then, Lee. Nik, in the psychometrics, is it just the questions that you put that are testing those soft skills?
I mean, when we use our own psychometrics, we use something called the Big 5 model of personality. Unfortunately, we don't use the raw Big 5, because one of the 5 is neuroticism, and I defy anybody to tell me, what score of neuroticism a particular person ought to have. So we use the sub factors. So they're things that I mentioned before: resilience, detail orientation, accommodation, sociability, work ethic, conscientiousness, and so on. There are about 30 that we use. And what we do is we look at the role in conjunction with the employer, and we go through the assessment that we have, and we mix and match the ones that we think are going to be particularly important for that role. And that has worked pretty well so far. because you only assess those things that are important. You don't assess other things that may sway somebody towards an individual, but not related to the specific ones that are important. So, for example, in the maintenance engineer I mentioned, most people like people to be friendly, but for a maintenance engineer, it really doesn't matter. So I'd rather concentrate on safety and detail orientation than someone being friendly. But if you give them that information, they may actually hire the wrong person, or not the right person. So that's how we go about it. We always customize the assessment for the role being recruited for. And we do have some companies that have a number of different roles within their organizations, and each one has a slightly different psychometric because they all require slightly different soft skills.
Yeah.
And then the behavioral profile that comes in and says, yes, are they going to fit in with the team? Are they going to fit in with the values? And I know it's not a perfect tool, but it's a pretty damn good tool for assessing that.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Before we come over to yourself there, Lee, if you have just joined us today, this is the Franchise Show, and today we are talking all about hiring fantastic people. It's been a great conversation so far, great input from both Lee, Nick, and our wonderful audience. This is a really important topic, both in franchising and in any business, to get the right people. And we've got some really interesting views on how we can find the right people for our business. Before we continue the conversation, let's bring in a few comments from our lovely audience. So let's bring in one from Simon first. Simon's put the competency-based interview is a powerful tool, particularly in the franchise space. Okay, yeah, absolutely. You've got to, you've got to use all these tools at your disposal to identify the characters, the values of these individuals. Really important. Let's take one here from Leslie. And first of all, welcome to the Franchise Show, Leslie. She has her own show, all based around the book Think and Grow Rich, which is a fantastic show. Join her on Fridays. And she's put, do you use DISC or M/B?
That's Myers-Briggs, that is.
Okay, excellent. Well, you know more about this to qualified personnel. Is the type of psychometrics that you use really important,
Yes,
Nick? You've been looking at this.
They are important. They are important. If you're using a psychometric for recruitment, then you have to use a normative instrument. Because in a normative instrument you can compare individuals with each other, whereas if you use an ipsative instrument, you can't. So we use, as I said, the Big Five model of personality. We also use DISC, but we don't use that to compare people. Once we've identified the right people, then we use DISC for cultural fit, team fit, and so on, as I've already said. We wouldn't use the Myers-Briggs because unfortunately the Myers-Briggs does not have a very good test-retest score. So you can do it in the morning, you can do it in the afternoon, you get different scores. That's not so helpful. And I don't know enough about the Enneagram to be able to comment on that. But I do know that the Big Five model is well regarded by the psychometric community.
Great input there, Leslie. Thanks for that. Let's have another look, because I want to make sure that we get through all of these questions. Let's welcome Tim Morris to the show. Always good to have Tim with us. Tim is one of our lovely supporters and works with Nikki Senior on the bridge, helping support lovely franchisees all around the country. Let's put a comment up here from Steve Barrett. Steve's put, well said on the hard skills part, Nick. So true. Yeah, I mean, adding that value with those soft skills before you look at these hard skills is just really important. Again, I think I've said this before, but I heard of an organization once. Now, this was a brand new organization in a tech field. And rather than thinking we need a salesperson, we need somebody in accounts, we need somebody in HR, and these traditional roles that have then tasks associated with them. They did a different thing, and I always think it's worth talking about when we're talking about hiring people, because what they did is they developed a list of tasks that needed doing for this business to operate. They then tried to apply what values and what type of people those tasks would appeal to. And they tried separating out those, they didn't even give them job roles, but they just tried separating out these tasks. And then they were looking for individuals with the characters and the values that matched into these tasks. And I just thought that's a really refreshing way of looking at it if you've got a brand new business. What do you think of that?
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant. Deconstructing everything back to its roots and really looking at the attributes first before anything else. It's like building your playbook, isn't it? It's exactly the same, and that's what they've done with their thinking and recruitment. I think you can pretty much do that in any business. It's even, with how businesses evolve and how the generations behind change and their expectations, I think it would be good course to do that routinely, perhaps every 5 or 7 years, and just look at your business again and deconstruct it and say, are we still doing the right things to get the right people in these particular tasks that we asked for?
Yep.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I mean, I just want to, because we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left until we get to the end of the main part of this. I just want to make sure that we have brought up everything that our wonderful audience has said, because I've always said this show is about everybody. This is a community and we have a conversation together. So Leslie's put there are large organizations that use the Enneagram to staff their business is based on exactly what you're saying. Yeah, so Leslie's agreeing, and absolutely, this is a conversation that's about a refreshed approach to finding people that are going to match in with your business and that are going to be happier, and everyone will be happier then, if you don't make those wrong decisions, or you make less of those. So it's been a great conversation. Let's come to one from Simon. Simon says, Nick, you need to. Oh, okay. You need to go on mute. Your mic is booming and feedback. Well, I think that's stopped now because Nick, you moved, didn't you?
I didn't think it was me because I've muted it several times and it made no difference.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to have a look at that. I mean, we're coming from 3 parts of the world, including a Premier Inn hotel with my phone tethered to my laptop. So we'll do our best here with the tech. Right. Let's have a look. So I think we've got everything there. I was just going to come to you, Lee, at the end there. I asked Nick about how do you test soft skills. How did you do that? Was it really just sort of you thinking this person's good? I know you said there that you built a sort of a value set, and you encourage managers to build the same value set. But what sort of tips can you give people from your experience about testing those soft skills?
It's interesting because as a franchisee, you have a prescriptive interview criteria that you would have, right? It comes out the book. Most franchises say this is the play in terms of how you ask the questions. This is the straight and narrow where you do keep yourself safe as an employer. So you have to be really, really careful that you're not breaching boundaries and regulations. So you train your team really, really well, but they have a real good, deep understanding of what you're actually looking for in those candidates. So when they ask questions, they know how to look out for them. And then bringing that into real life, when they go around the business, there's a meet and greet, they're getting to see people, just sitting back and watching them and seeing if you can spot those characters, those values in the engagement that they're having with those team members. And we have a half hour where our team members will take the candidates round different departments, etc. And then they'll talk to customers that are coming through, and you're just watching, the basics, the eye contact, the smiling, all these attributes that make a good person, rather than sitting back and shying away from it, if they're stepping forward. Again, it depends on the role. If it's an optician, you want them to be, asking the clinical questions and, coming up with, the real pertinent points of tests, for example, if you're doing a test within an interview. So there's really different ways of doing it. And it also depends on the level that you're recruiting for as well.
Absolutely. No, look, it's been a fantastic conversation, and we have now come to the end of the first part of today's show. So this is the bit where my camera will go off for a little bit, and this is not me and my internet breaking. This is because it's now technically illegal to see me without wearing a hat. So I now have a beautiful hat on, and of course this hat is brought to you by PJ Murphy and Son, bespoke British hatters. Friend Paul, who's also a franchisor. And if you want a hat like this, talk to Paul. Now, this is also the part of the show where we stop talking about franchising and hiring people, as fun as that's been. And we have a little chat and get to know our guests a little bit better. And they get their opportunity to get their own back on me and ask me a question, whatever they want. And I don't know what it's going to be. So let's go to Nick first. Nick, let's choose. Tell us something that perhaps we don't know about you. Have you got any surprise hobbies or something like that?
No. Okay, so a few years ago, people probably don't know I'm originally from Croatia, although I've been out of Croatia most of my life. And a few years ago, I went back for Christmas, and we went to Slovenia for Christmas Eve. And halfway through the dinner, the manager came up to our table and said, "I wonder if you can come with me." So I thought, okay, well, anyway, he marched me to his office, and there were two military people there with guns drawn, and they accused me of being a deserter, and took me straight to military prison in Zagreb, where I spent 4 days.
Oh my goodness.
Until they discovered it all had been a mistake, and the computer system was obviously screwed up, and I was let go. But during that time, I did sort of wonder what I was going to tell my then employer about, not being able to come back to work. So, sorry, military prison hope position will be available on return. That sort of thing.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love it. Well, look, before you get your own back on me, let's have a little chat to Lee. So Lee, you can choose any of these. Something we don't know about you, maybe someone famous you've met or a claim to fame, and then you can get your own back on me.
Yeah. Many years ago, I played basketball with Chris Akabusi.
Oh, lovely. I like that.
Wasn't a basketball player, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's not.
And that was in super schools back in the day.
Fantastic. I love that. It's one of my favorite bits of this, because we get to hear some really interesting stuff. And look, we've spoken today about trying to understand people and trying to get people out of a different way of thinking. And that's kind of exactly what we do here. We talk about something that people hopefully want to have a discussion about, but then, we find out some other little bits. So it's always a bit I really enjoy. So I did promise you that you can get your own back on me. So either one of you can ask me anything you like now.
Go on, Lee, you ask him.
Okay.
Harvey,
I'll get him next time.
Yeah. What's your pet peeve? What really gets under your skin, and what do you do about it when it happens?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't get annoyed that often. I tend to be quite calm. When I do get annoyed, it tends to be taken quite seriously. And I mean, look, I don't like when people it's not really a pet peeve. I just don't like when people are treated badly in public, or behind closed doors. So I would always want to stand up for someone. Any kind of bullying, nothing like that. So, I think I would always hope that I could be the person that would stand up to anybody who was doing something like that to somebody else, because you've got to look after other people. So, I think it's probably that. But yeah, good question. Excellent. And maybe, Nick, next time you can ask me about the time I was nearly arrested for a jewelry theft as well. So try and remember
I
that one.
remember that.
We'll, we'll do that one next time. So look, that just leaves me to let you know what's going to happen next week. But before I do that, I would like to first of all thank everybody in our fantastic audience for being with us live today. Everyone who's going to watch this in the future, this is you are really what makes this show special, and it really is a conversation between us all to hopefully add a bit of value to our wonderful industry. So first of all, big thank you to all of you. And I'd also like to thank both Nick and Lee for being fantastic guests and answering these questions so wonderfully. So thank you to you both.
Pleasure.
And you're welcome. And next week on the show, so next Tuesday, that is Tuesday, September the 30th, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST, we are going to be talking about marketing a franchise QSR or restaurant with the lovely Brittany Satterfield and a surprise guest. So that's going to be a really exciting one. Please join us for that if you're into your marketing and you want to find out about how to market your business. And that will be next Tuesday, the 30th of September at 5:15 here in the UK. So until next time, my friends, take very good care. Cheerio.